You can find God through sex. You can marry the sacred with the carnal, open up channels of transcendent divine expression that are not otherwise available when we are in this muddy blur. Right. So a lot of what I have interested myself in is the different perspectives on polarity that can help us understand how complementarity can become available in the midst of seemingly irreconcilable differences. And so I have organized what I have learned into different sort of like resource-based action arenas where you can go deeper on this concept of coming into a new understanding of what feminism might actually consist of and what womaning might look like when you are interested in submission, the art of submission, and what it is to come into comportment with and toward a trustworthy masculine energy, and how you practice that even outside of partnership in your daily life, how you ready yourself if you are seeking partnership, or how you just create the dynamics inside of yourself for that internal polarity play to begin to express. So, number one is the art of self-husbanding. So this concept is one that I have been working on largely with my coach, Whitney, for the greater part of the past year. And I have come to understand why I have been a match for the relationships that I have had in my past, which have been extraordinary and amazing in all of their very specific ways, and also have not exhibited this kind of polarity that honestly I don't see around me either. So we're creating the conditions together for this kind of polarity to begin to express in the everyday relationship. I have looked at the ways that I have treated myself like a pretty shitty boyfriend, right? Like the ways that I have interacted with myself, with my emotional realm, with my needs, with my body as a sort of overlord instead of a loving and adoring king to his queen. So chief among the self-husbanding commitments is to begin to listen to yourself. Truly listen. So when you're a good listener, you're not thinking of what it is that you have to say, how you're going to fix it for the person, what your opinion is. You are in receptivity. You are in this place of taking in so that you can create and hold proper attuned space. You can't do that if you don't know how to perceive what's actually in front of you. So the listening impulse can span, all sorts of different dimensions of your life. But one of the easiest ways to begin to engage listening to yourself is to relate to that which is coming up inside of you, whether it's a physical need or an emotional experience, with curiosity. So how would you begin to turn towards yourself, turn towards those inner impulses and experiences with a tell me more? That phrase is so important. Tell me more comportment. How do you say, tell me more to yourself instead of, oh, this is annoying. Stop this. Oh, I wish this wasn't happening. Right. Or I know what needs to happen. So this stops. Right. So whether that is, feelings of so-called anxiety, or whether it's that you have a stomach ache, or whether it's that you really need to put socks on, right? How is it that you can begin to listen? The parts of yourself, and, you'll learn that I have become very, very, I'm all sorts of lit up about parts work and internal family systems. And the reason is because it dovetails perfectly with everything I have taught about how illness and symptoms are not an expression of your brokenness or your wrongness or your damaged nature, that they are a wise expression from you to you about you. Well, that means that we have an opportunity to relate to every single internal expression, again, whether that's emotional, mental, or physical. We have an opportunity to embrace that. And really, as Dick Schwartz writes in his book, really live as if there are no bad parts, as if nothing is actually wrong with you and there never was, that there's a very good reason for every single thing that is showing up. And if you don't like it, there's a very good reason for you to not like it, right? So all of it makes sense. So how do you begin to get to know that which you would rather not get to know inside of yourself? And how do you also get to know the part that doesn't want to get to know the thing, right? So it just creates, probably also on a nervous system level, it creates the conditions for there to be this regenerative experience of energy flowing and moving. So it's a way to create a very firm, approving, secure, and safe masculine container. Next is containers, right? So create containers for yourself. So what does that mean? It means what it sounds like. If you visualize a container, you know its dimensions, you know its purpose, right? So when you are, like one of the stories I've told about, the last time I unconsciously failed to create a container was when I went to the car wash. It was a new place, right? And I didn't ask how long the car wash was going to take. I didn't ask how much it cost. I didn't ask whether I stay in the car or get out. And I just sort of was like, there are all these men running around and there was like nobody at the reception podium or whatever. And it ends up taking way longer than I have. And I'm late to meet my girlfriend or whatever. And I had created so much unsafety for my system that I was in fawning, right? So I was in that state of, the nervous system alarm, where I ended up, oh my God, this story is so ridiculous and funny and important. I ended up, instead of saying, I need to go, when is my car done? Can I please pay? I ended up giving my Instagram handle to the guy who was taking a very long time to clean my car with his, hand towel or whatever, when he tried to pick me up. So that's what occurred, because I betrayed myself. I abandoned myself, and I did so. Oh, and by the way, then as I was leaving, I crashed my car. So I crashed my car into a pole. That's funny too. The universe is hilarious. And all of that happened because I didn't create a container. If I had created a container and I knew all of the details of what the agreement was that I was entering into, I wouldn't have gone, because I would have learned it takes an hour and I only had half an hour. And I would have learned that it's like this very detailed hand administered like cleaning that I personally don't need. And I would have recognized that my needs were not to be met in this container. So I'm out, right? And I didn't do all of that. And it was a very vibrant reminder of the consequences of not creating containers. You can create a container for any little thing, right? So before I sit down to talk to you all, I can make sure I have what I need. I have my water. I have socks on my feet. The temperature is good in the room. I have quiet and privacy. I'm going to be here for about this long. And then I can recognize whether there are needs that potentially can't be met at the current time. And maybe I shouldn't even enter this container. So it's a way to render conscious what otherwise is just sort of like, going with the flow, right? I'm just going to, it's fine. I'm going to see how it goes. Well, most of us are not at a stage in our nervous system healing where going with the flow is available. So it makes a lot more sense to provide that masculine containment for ourselves so that we can recognize the opportunities we have to actually relax, actually let our nervous system move, in that more fluid space. When the container, it's like the river bank is required for the water to move. So these containers also apply to the way that you relate to inner emotional work. So if I have a strong emotion coming up, I will often literally set a timer for 30 to 90 seconds. And I will put my hand on the space where I feel it in my body. And I will just listen to what that, part of me has to say. Then just be there, receptive. If I didn't have the timer, I might be too clenched up to actually open to that. So for me, those time containers are really big. All my friends know this. If I have people over, they know, Kelly's end time is really important for her to be able to relax and have fun. So creating containers, learning how to devote to yourself is another one of these practices. So I was in the shower the other day and I was brushing my hair, and I am in hair reclamation, right? So I used to dye my hair. I used to straighten my hair. I used to get a blowout every single week when I was in Manhattan. And to me, that was symbolic of my relationship to my own, inner wild. And as I have, let my hair do its thing, I've come to really love it, right? And so I'm in the shower and I brush my hair in the shower normally. And I'm brushing my hair and I recognize that I have this choice point where I can relate to myself with sort of like something on a spectrum from like manhandling to, rapey energy, or I can relate to myself with this sort of like, come on, just do it, get it done, participate, right? Just to get the knots out kind of a thing. Or I can brush my hair as if I am my own lover who just finds my hair to be the most gorgeous dimension of my being. How would that brush move through my hair? Right. So as I recognized that choice point, I slowed down, the motion of my hand down my hair. And I had an experience of like taking care of myself, devoting to myself in a way that, of course, I would love, to have mirrored from the outside in. So that self-devotion is also another means of self-husbanding, right? It's the difference between, putting the lotion on because the lotion has healthy fats that are good for your skin, and it's going to be a great supplement to your health regimen, or anointing yourself with pleasure. And the slowness that is required to engage in, first of all, noting the opportunity and then taking the opportunity is a part of this resolution of that immature masculine defensive structure that says, get it done, do the thing, stop, dawdling, right? Stop wasting time and get in line, right? So another way is to begin to get boundaried. Obviously, there's so much in the zeitgeist right now around boundaries. And I actually think there's a lot of shadow material hidden in there, because sometimes what we call a boundary is really just an unwillingness to acknowledge that we've met our capacity for what it is that we can hold emotionally. And we are now attributing to and potentially blaming somebody else for that limited capacity on our own parts, right? So what I imagine my boundaries have shifted over time, softened, because as I grow my inner masculine strength, my spine becomes more reliable. I am more able to be around energies that are dissonant or unaligned or aren't for me without feeling like I'm giving something up, right? But initially, those boundaries, those very strong, no, this is the line kind of boundaries, were part of how I created, and still how I created that safe container for myself, for my inner softness to begin to blossom open. And there are two phrases that I have found to be extraordinarily helpful, because otherwise we can get into the habit of feeling like our feelings don't matter because they're just feelings, right? So, which is not the kind of comportment towards feelings that ultimately serves us as women. So if I am going to recognize that my feelings are valid unto themselves, I don't want to have to explain why they should be entitled to exist. There are two phrases that are really helpful. One is, I'm not available for this, ... or I am available for this, ... right? So that is a way, without any sort of like, here's why, here's my, Rolodex of reasons, to say, I'm available for this, I'm not available for this. And then similarly, this, it doesn't work for me, right? So you can say no and remain connected and say something like, thank you so much for thinking of me. It doesn't work for me to come on Tuesday. The end. I remember the first time I started working with these phrases years ago, I was so shocked at how that was just it. It's just a mic drop. There's no corollary. There's no follow-up. There's no, apologizing. That's it. And I find those really, really helpful. So when you begin to live your life truly assessing whether or not something works for you or not, you're necessarily attuning to whether or not it works for you, to what your needs are, and can they be met? And is this a situation where I'm going to ignore, that my inner girls know, just so that I could get some crumbs of approval or connection? Or am I going to stand with her and her fear, or another part's fear, that I might be punished if I say that no? Is there actually an adult self in the room?